Welcome to Desert Wanderers. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. Today we have a special host, Father Sintra. He will be doing his Generational Catholicism series. This plays on the third week of every month and will be a new segment for our show on Desert Wanderers. We're so excited to bring this to you. Let's jump right into it.
And maybe I should give a little introduction of the project. So if anyone hasn't already listened to my conversation with Natalie Lair, maybe that's a good place to start. At the end of my conversation with her, we talked for maybe 30 or 40 minutes about what it is that we're doing here. And I'll just try to give a brief summary of that, and we'll go from there. And so I guess the premise is, as we know, most of our youth have left the faith, are leaving the faith, will leave the faith. The numbers are not in our favor. But how could this be? Catholicism is true. Catholic Church is the church that Christ founded. Christ is God. So how could this be happening? So that's, of course, a really broad and complicated and convoluted question. But then we know, and I have a statistic with that, which is that only 15%, so this is a study that was cited in the Idaho Catholic Register recently, that by the 2010s, the figure of Catholics who stay in the Catholic Church, having been raised in Catholic families, is only 15%. So only 15% of Catholics who were raised in Catholic homes go on to be practicing Catholics as adults. So that's obviously a tragedy. But then at the same time, there are lots of families throughout the country and probably throughout the world who have had lots of children, or the number of children is maybe not a constant. We have 4 represented here on this call, on this project, but there are others out there who had 2 children and both children grew up to become practicing Catholics. One who's four children, and all 4 of them have gone on, and 5 for 5, 6 for 6, 8 for 8, 11 for 11. And so that raises the question, right? What happened in those homes? This can't just be a coincidence. It can't just have been that they got lucky or that God favored them over others. God is wanting to call everyone to himself, to draw everyone to himself. He certainly wants Catholic children to grow up and become practicing Catholics as adults. So what was going on in those homes? What were the patterns? What were the habits? What were the practices, the disciplines, the home life? What were they eating for breakfast? What was going on there that allowed the transmission, or that facilitated, that enabled, that better disposed the family for the transmission of the Catholic faith, the Catholic religion, from one generation to the next, to such a degree that all children decided on their own accord, when they became older, that they would be practicing Catholics themselves and go all in, and then now, decide to raise their children in the faith. I've already been talking for a few minutes, so I'll pause here. So Flanagans, would you just give a brief introduction of yourselves to the group?
Ladies first.
Hi, I'm Heidi, and I'm married to John.
She's an amazing homeschooling mom of 7 wonderful kids, ages 6 through 19. Our oldest, we just launched to college seminary 2 months ago, 2 months. My name is John. I get to work for the work of my hands. I get to work in vocations, and was part of a nonprofit that helped deliver Nelson to the Diocese of Boise.
Jake and Lindsay, would you introduce yourselves?
I'm Jake Dyson, and this is my wife, Lindsay. We have been married 13 years. Is that right? Yes, 13 years. And we have 7 children. And Lindsay's pregnant currently. Yeah, it's very exciting. I work for Napa Auto Parts. It's my dad's business. He's His grandfather started it back in 1957, so this is fourth generation. So I run the accounting department and the HR department for him.
I am a homemaker. I homeschool you said 7 kids, yeah. And their ages 11 to 15 months.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next up are the big Dodges. So we have the big Dodges and the little Dodges. So Ken Sr.
So,
and Teresa.
so
Yep.
big, literally big, or figuratively big?
You know, to the eye of the beholder, the year of the beholder.
I'm Ken Dodge. This is my wife, Teresa. We have been married for 34 years, and we have 5 children and 13 grandchildren, and one on the way, another one on the way. Let's see, what do we want to say? We work together in real estate. I'm retired law enforcement, and Teresa was a homeschooling mom and homeschooled everyone, and is still homeschooling grandchildren and teaching CGS. And then we work together in real estate now.
Now we're also taking care of grandparents, helping with the grandparents, both Ken's mom and dad and my mom and dad.
That's a whole other thing. We'll have a sidebar later, Nelson.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, that is a big challenge.
Little Dodges.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Perfect.
Testing this setup out. Yeah, so I'm Kenny Dodge. I'm junior. This is my wife, Catherine. So we've been married for 5 years, 5.5 years. We've got 3 kids and one on the way. 4, 3, 1, and little baby. So we are up in Coeur d'Alene, and I work and co-own a marketing agency up here. And Catherine stays home, and then a few days a month she's working nursing shifts at the hospital.
Just started homeschooling our first of many years of homeschooling.
Awesome. I sense a pattern here.
It's happening.
I've got a feeling you had a hand in that, Nelson.
Well, I did not pre-select based on schooling, but that seemed like to be a big factor. Here we're trying to focus on what makes Catholicism generational, or to be passed from one generation to the next. Any initial thoughts, initial reactions to that? If you have something you want to say, feel free to just jump in and say it. If you don't, no problem.
Well, I'd want to throw out our own disclaimer. You know, we're practicing Catholics, meaning we're still practicing. We don't have it right. We got a lot of practice yet to do. So anything that we have to offer is just, it's our experience. So for anybody listening, you know, our results were blessed by the family we have. And it's hard work to keep faith first. It means you say no to a lot of other good things, but hopefully it's for keeping the better things in focus. So it's just, you know, it's an honor to be here amongst such an august crew of great families. But for anybody listening, I think I can speak for everybody that none of us have it figured out. We're just trying our best, and God has blessed our meager offerings.
Thank you for that, John. Two things I want to hit on that. One is I had to twist all of your arms to do this. Every one of you that I approached to do this, you were like, no, we don't have the answers for this. What are you talking about? Why us? We don't know. We're just trying to figure out ourselves. And so, yes, you do speak for all of you in coming from that perspective of we're not like the gurus on the mountaintop dispensing the wisdom. We're more like researchers, like explorers, trying to mine some gold. So I appreciate you saying that. And I love how you said the no to other things, you know, a lot of hard work, a lot of practice, and also no to other things. And that can probably be a whole category in itself. But do you have something that immediately comes to mind? What is something that you've intentionally have had to say no to in order to be a practicing Catholic?
Well, and I'd love my wife to chime in on this. COVID was a scary thing for a lot of people. I mean, I was in the hospital, I almost died with it, but I look back on it as a blessing because it quieted down all the good things that we were doing because you just couldn't do it and it allowed us, we were just kind of insulated. So sort of our circumstances allowed us to see what really was most important, so it's just all of us huddled around the TV for daily mass. It's like we get to watch it on TV because we can't walk across the street and receive them. To see adoration in Poland or Switzerland, and we'd go adoration chapel hopping, if you will, because we had nothing better to do while we're stuck in the house. But with our education, everything being homeschooled, we got to just spend a lot more family time. And even the other good things, ballet or, kids choir, whatever the different activities were that the kids had, they were cut out from under it. And then we just had the family time. And the more that we realized how much we enjoyed each other's company, even after the fact that it's, we can now go do these other things. We asked the kids, this was really special. We really like this. If you could add anything back, what would you add more of? And every one of them, more family time. It's like, oh, more family time. Well, that's what we had the most of. So it's now our answer, our default is no. If, oh, you're going to add this? No, unless it's better than what we have. And so being able to ask the kids, no, there's some things that have crept back in, but we're very hesitant to add because it has to replace something that's pretty awesome already. And that's just being together. So we do a lot of games at night, soccer in the backyard, whatever it is. It's just spending time together. It's just really a treat when you see the 19-year-old to the 6-year-old. It makes for interesting soccer games when you're trying to equal out the teams. Okay, just throw one kid on your back and run because he can't keep up. But it's a gift. Heidi, what would you say?
I want to just balance that with the needs of each kid and the needs of the family. So I really appreciate that when things opened up and we had all these opportunities again, the 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 direction that you had was so helpful that we're going to say no unless it's better than what we have. And with that, especially I think as kids get to be older in middle school, in high school, if they have a good set of friends, if they have a way they can connect with a great youth group, that's really important for them to have peer time, that they're not the only ones who live this way, who believe this way. Even if it's just one time in the summer youth retreat or something, that's really important. So I think to take into consideration the ages and the needs of each kid. And so for our daughter, for example, it was really important for her to have time with other girls where she was doing something. And so we could be really creative, and we host once a month a book club for the girls, and we try to do a lot, as much as we can together, so it's not one kid going off to do this activity or this activity, because then we're just scattered. We really try to protect Sundays, some of those kinds of things that have been really helpful for us.
Beautiful. Thank you. What about big dodges or little dodges or Dysons? Any other initial reactions to our project at large?
I would say that we would say no to anything extra, sports or things like that. It was very rare to do sports on Sunday. We kept Sunday holy. For the most part. Sometimes Ken was working in law enforcement, but even still, we would go for a hike or spend time together. And so if sometimes there was traveling on Sunday, but we'd find mass, because the kids did some competitive sports. But that was mass was first, period.
I think it's interesting, and to play off what you said, we've had this conversation numerous times because, several friends we've had conversations about that, watching our kids grow up and become adults and maintaining their faith and actually living their faith better than we did, better than I did, and which is amazing. And we scratch our heads and we don't know. And it would be an interesting perspective to hear our kids, Kenny, and our other kids to see what their perspective was being in those shoes. I feel like where we are up here in Coeur d'Alene was for the early years, it was kind of a hotbed area with, the different Catholic communities. So there was a lot of communication, I think, that went on. It seemed like as the kids grew up and were teenagers, there was just a ton of communication. Like we were, always in their business, so to speak. And I think that was important, maintaining this routine that we had that we still scratch our heads and don't really know why, other than like everyone else, we care passionately for them and we try to live our faith as best we can. But it seemed like, trying to show and live it and show that you're a human being and have weaknesses and you fail and you get back on the horse and you keep trying, and communicating that they can see you as a real person in this. And I think that's just one of the things that I always kind of go back to, trying to reflect on why the kids do what they do so well, actually.
I do have to embarrass you guys, Ken and Teresa, that you are in fact the gurus on the mountaintop with all of the wisdom to dispense to the rest of us. You're the exception to the rule here in this group. I'm sure you disagree, but no, I'm teasing you. But yeah, just to highlight and to celebrate the fact that all five of your children have are adults now, and they've all chosen to, well, maybe not JoJo yet. She's still a bit of a loose cannon. We'll see how she turns out. But no, all five of them are wonderful human beings and in love with God and in love with the church, and it's just so visible and so palpable. And I said this to Natalie. Natalie Lair, the host of the Desert Wanderers. I said, yeah, I think there is some wisdom we can mine from them. And she said like pressing grapes to pull out the good wine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thanks for allowing us to do that with you. And of course, you're learning too, still learning and learning from mistakes and reflecting back on those. And then one of your children, your only boy, Kenny, is here on this call too. What are some initial reactions from you, Kenny and Catherine?
As usual, your timing is spot on because we're going through this in real time. So we're asking the same question every day, trying to figure out how both of our parents, because Catherine comes from a family with 9 kids who are all practicing. They could certainly be the gurus on the mountaintop as well.
Mm-hmm.
But our oldest is 4, so up until this point, it's just been trying to keep babies alive for the most part, and now it feels more like crunch time, and we're having to parent more and make sure that we're passing this information along to our 4-year-old. And we're trying to figure out what that looks like, and I know we're going to talk more about that throughout this project, but it's good timing. It's appreciated. I know that we talk about this, we talk to our parents about this, and we ask those questions too. And I guess jury's still out if we have the answer.
Yeah, we're so blessed to have 2 incredible families that did such a great job. We talk all the time about things that stood out to us and how the things that really impacted our faith life and our development in our faith, what made us hold on to our faith during the hard times. And how we can implement that with our kids and kind of create a greenhouse where even with our 4-year-old, it's beautiful to see his faith life and to see that age does not define depth of spirituality. And just to learn from our kids and to realize that we're helping to facilitate his relationship with God that's already just there and so natural and so strong. And it's beautiful, even just now that he's verbal, to see that all of our children have these incredible relationships with God, that sometimes we just need to step back and learn how to let it take its course and figure out how to maintain that greenhouse. What do they need developmentally to just grow and thrive as people and to grow the relationship with God? And we're figuring it out as we go.
Beautiful. Thank you. And now I need to embarrass myself because I'll share the story that, a few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I emailed Kenny and said, hey, Kenny, are you going to be able to do this? And I knew you guys only had 3 kids. you had just spent a few weeks with me with the three of your kids. And Kenny responds and he says, don't know what we'll contribute. Just two confused parents trying to raise four babies and keep them Catholic, et cetera, et cetera. And he went totally over my head, didn't catch it at all. Called him and said, hey, so you're gonna do this project? That's how self-centered I am. Hey, you're gonna do my project with me? And then you're like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. By the way, did you read my email? Yeah, I said I did. Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, you don't know what you're contributing. Yeah, that's yeah. No, did you really read my email? And I didn't even have to go back to it. I just it flashed in my mind like that said four babies, didn't it? So that's how spacey I am, but how awesome it is that you guys are on this
We have
journey.
the
So
graces for four children now. So we're the least qualified people are one more child qualified
right.
grace-wise. So
Just leveled up.
yeah.
yes. And Mike is 4, huh? So will he be 5 already when the
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
fourth
he will
comes?
turn five in a
Just
couple
5.
months by the time baby comes.
Awesome. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Dyson, anything you'd like to add as far as initial reaction to our project?
I don't know. I'm kind of forgetting the question now, but a lot of things that you guys talked about resonated. John, when you were talking about COVID, we grew a lot as a family during COVID, and I'm really thankful for that time. It was scary. I remember like coming home one day and I stopped at the grocery store because we heard, we were hearing things and that like shelves are empty and it was just weird. It was eerie. But then like just being home, like we were home a lot. I still was coming to work, but we did nothing. We didn't do anything on the weekends. Um, and what happened as a result of that was we started living like more liturgically. Like it was right during springtime and Lent and Easter, and we started doing all these things at home for like liturgical living because we couldn't go out and do anything else. Um, we really upped our game in that respect, and our kids just loved it, and we loved it. Um, we spent a ton of time together. We did, like I remember we went for a drive one day, which we don't really do that, but we're just like, let's just go do something. So we went for a drive in the South Hills, which it's kind of mountainous here, just south of us. And we just like spent the afternoon just driving around the hills, and that was really fun. And we've kind of continued that. We've let things creep in, like you talked about, John. And it's actually making me think, like, man, we need to just quit doing some things. But because it's like a really fond memory, that time. And that whole summer was that way. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about that recently, like kind of pinpointing that as like a little turning point in our family, I would say. Yeah, the help focusing on what's most important and help saying no. COVID said no for us, so that was nice. But yeah, like we have no answers, but are like deeply interested in the question and very invested in the question. Like got 8 souls hanging in the balance. Like so we and we love talking about it. We do
Yeah.
all the time anyways.
And Catherine, something you said about like we just need to step out of the way and let our kids foster this relationship, or encourage them to foster that relationship with God. That's so true. Like it's so natural to them. Like we're the ones that kind of screw it up, I think, or we're the ones that can screw it up.
Yeah, I've thought that a lot. Like, yeah, with some of our kids who like tend to be more spiritual even than others of the kids, like I just don't want to squash it. That's what I always think. Like, I don't want to ruin this good thing that they've got going.
Yeah.
Just don't let me ruin it, Lord.
It
That's so
helps
beautiful.
though, like
Yep.
with, I don't know, like thinking about, how God fathers us. Like that's really how we need to be modeling. That's where they're going to grow and foster and like become, really who God made them to be.
Yes. So I pick up a common theme here, which is the preference for time spent within the family, which both is preceded by and fosters friendships within the family, within siblings and between husband and wife first, and between husband or father and children, mother and children, and within siblings. Seems like that's something that you all are very intentional about, and whether you do it naturally or not. I mean, whether it comes to you naturally or whether it's something that you actively have to work on, seems like that is a priority for all of you. And that jives with this article from Dr. Ray Gurandi, where he talked about how a warm and affectionate home is the first indispensable building block. That if that's in place, that's not the only necessary piece. There's more that needs to be added to that. But if that's not in place, then it doesn't matter how many rosaries you say, how many daily masses you go to, how many saint videos you watch or listen to. Without the warm and affectionate home, the soil to receive God and to receive the faith is not there. So it seems like you're all very intentional about cultivating that soil. Maybe I'll ask a follow-up. Oh, go ahead, John, please. Yeah.
I say on that note, and please curtail this, but uh, I, I think there's a part, at least in my own life, some of the greatest victories have come from some of the biggest crosses in my own life. So when you talk about that fertile soil, I think I came from a great Catholic family, but I had my own kind of father wounds. Am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? And it took years before I had that sort of kumbaya with my dad before he passed, praise God. But I didn't want that kind of weight on my kids. And so when I think about what it is to be a father, it's our kids are blessed to know you, Father Nelson. Um, but the primary relationship that they have with a father is me, and they're stuck with me, good or bad. But that also translates to how do they see God the Father? Because I'm the only example of a father that they really have. So to that end, this has been a 19-year process, but it's one of the most rewarding of my life. Knowing that I had that own sort of hole that I didn't want to pass on as a generational burden from my family to my kids. Like, are you good enough? Do you have what it takes? From the moment that they could breathe, I'd bless them when they went to bed, and I'd ask them 3 questions. Is there anything you can do to make me love you more? They say no. Is there anything you can do to make me love you less? They say no. Why do I love you? Because I'm your son. So can you ever change that? No. I'm going to love you forever no matter what? Yeah. And it's been every night for their entire life. Even when they're older and they go to bed, I still, it's not quite every night for them, but consistent. And then when we dropped off our oldest at the seminary, college seminary, my wife had the great idea, like, well, we need to pray with him. This is kind of like saying goodbye to a whole new era. And then I started getting all teary-eyed and realizing this is actually a culmination of something God's been putting on my heart almost 20 years ago. So we took some time to pray with him, pray over him, and God, I'm entrusting my son back to you. I'm not going to be your daily formatter anymore, Owen. You've got great priests who are kind of taking this baton from me. I'm always going to be your dad. I'm not giving that up. It's just going to look different. You're not in my house under my roof every day. And then I asked the same question, but with a little change. Is there anything you can do to make God love you less? He says, no. Is there anything you can do to make God love you more? He says, no. Why does he love you? Because I'm his son. Man, it still gives me goosebumps where it's like, yes, you got it. You're good enough. You have what it takes, not because of anything you do or don't do for the rest of your life. It's simply because you're his son is why he loves you. And so that's why I share it's kind of from my own crosses or own wounds that the Lord has granted me a great boon. to be able to experience that, at least with one child, and I hope for all of them, to just let them know that they have what it takes simply because of who created them.
It's fantastic.
Well, everyone, that's a wrap. We are done
Well said.
with the project. We have arrived at the answer. It's been good doing this with you all.
Praise the Lord.
See you later. Yeah. So good. Well, maybe I'll insert a couple of caveats here for the listener land out there. So the first one that we've already covered, how, yeah, we're approaching this from the perspective of humility, of exploration, of searching. We're looking for the answers. Surely we've received some things in our upbringing, in our formation, in training, in books, etc. But we certainly don't think we, jokes aside, we certainly don't think we have arrived at the answer, and now we're just here to dispose of the answers. And then related to that, that these things are complicated, obviously, that there are many different layers, many different dimensions, many moving parts. There's no perfect formula. There's no magic bullet. That it's sure there may be some practices that are helpful, that are effective, but there's no, yeah, I guess there's a lot to say here, but one thing, even the perfect formula, even if I were a dad and I were to use this practice that you just gave us, John, as beautiful as it is, and I do that every night, but let's just say, for the sake of the extremity, I'm a jerk the rest of the day, and I don't spend any time with my kids the rest of the day, and I don't look into my own heart and my own woundedness, et cetera, then even that practice is not going to be effective. And we have things that we know are good and that we know are bad, and because that's already in the foreground for us. But then we also have our blind spots, and that's true for all of us, and we're still seeking those and being open to those. So all of that just to say that this is all very, very complicated, which leads to the third point, which is, it's certainly not my intention, and I know I can speak for all of you, that it's not our intention to induce shame on anyone or induce guilt or point fingers or accuse blame. If there are any parents out there, whether our own parents or also parents of others who are parents out there whose children have left the faith, whether one of them or all of them, it may seem as if we're accusing them of having done something wrong and that it's their fault, and that we're here to induce shame on them. And if only you were to do or had done what we are here articulating, then things would have been different. And so that's certainly not our intention. And we make mistakes all the time, and we're still making mistakes, and hopefully we're recognizing them and apologizing and leaning into God's mercy more and more for ourselves. But any parent out there whose children have left the faith, we're not here to shame you. We're here to walk with you and for you to walk with us. And we invite you to come with us on this journey of exploring these complicated issues. And one reason why it's not your fault, or one reason why it's apparent and it's evident that it's not our intention to induce shame, is because we know that at the end of the day, everyone has their own free will. At the end of the day, it is up to the individual to choose whether they want to be Catholic or not. And so we can have, you can have Mary and Joseph, the perfect parents, raising children and never sinning, never making a single mistake, and having the perfect worldview and the perfect everything. And their children are still going to come to a point where they have to decide for themselves. And they can choose God and they can choose not God. And that's part of our of our human nature, having been made in the image and likeness of God, having our own free will. And the alternative is also true. We can have the worst parents in the world, and all of the children could choose God. Yeah, but so complicated, free will. But then one last caveat is that let's say things that we say do poke at the heart and do poke at wounds and do poke at maybe mistakes and areas where, if we could go back in time, we would do differently. Obviously, it doesn't do any good playing the what if or the coulda, woulda, shoulda game, but in recognizing things now, okay, I had a perspective in the past that I recognize now isn't the best. The pressing question here is, has this, whatever this is, whatever X is, has it left an imprint, a wound, a area of brokenness in my heart currently? The children, they're now adults. We're not going to change them, most likely. They're making their decisions. But are those things still in my heart now? And if they are, then no shame. But if I try to just defend it and put a fortress around it, then that's going to be a continued obstacle between me and the Lord and between me and others. But if I can just, with patience, with vulnerability, with grace, with, with the assurance, as John said, with the assurance that God the Father loves me and that I can't do anything to make him love any less. So his love for me hasn't been tinged by the mistakes that I made in the past. So with this assurance, with this foundation, now I'm here presently, and now I'm learning something new about myself, that I have the option now, I have the choice now to bring the Lord into that area, for him to start to heal me, for him to start to love me in that spot, for him to draw me to himself a little more deeply, a little more personally, a little more intimately. And so even if, just to put a bow on that, even if I made mistakes in the past that I now recognize, the option is here on the table for me now. Will I allow the Lord into this area? So we don't know the answers. We're looking for them. It's all complicated. No shame on anyone. Come on this journey with us. All their kids, everyone has their own free will. And are there things in my heart now that can be healed with the grace of God? I said a lot. I have some questions that I wrote down to ask you guys. I haven't gotten to any of them. Is there anything anyone wants to say to any of that?
Something that I heard, I was listening to a podcast that Dr. Bob Schutz and Jake Kim do. I can't remember the title.
Restore the Glory?
Yes. And they were talking about wounds, and he was just talking about how important it is to apologize to your children, like once you realize that you've made a mistake. And I think that's really like the invitation, you know, like that you're giving me, like when I realize this, or if one of us realizes this, or one of the listeners realizes this, like it's an opportunity for healing. He was talking about his dad and how like those were some of the most powerful moments when his dad apologized. Like those are the things he remembers. He doesn't so much remember the trauma that was caused, or the wound or whatever, but what's stronger is forgiveness. So I've tried to take that into, like, when I know I mess up with the kids, like I try to apologize to them and let them know that I messed up.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I just wanted to say too, Mr. and Mrs. Dodge, like how beautiful, like their humility in seeing their children, their grown children, and being able to say like they're living the faith better than we did. Like that takes humility in a parent, and that was just really beautiful to hear. Like,
Yes.
They're the best.
They are the best. They're great.
Maybe not at Zoom, but they're the best.
Yeah.
You don't get into heaven based on how well you handle a computer.
Yeah. They knew ahead of time they were about to get praised, so they jumped off.
That's right.
Well, I have a few questions here for us to get to know one another a little better, and for our listeners to get to know us a little better too, and to start kind of laying some groundwork or something of a structure or a backbone for future episodes. First question is, what did your parents do with you as you were growing up that you thought was really helpful and effective in the transmission of the faith?
Why don't you go first?
I think one thing that stands out to me a lot growing up that I think helped develop my faith life is silence. Creating opportunities for silence for your children, I think, is indispensable for allowing them to develop that relationship with God, allowing you to step back and let that natural relationship develop. And so what that looked like for us is we went to daily mass at least once a week as a family. A quieter mass where I remember as a child being able to pray and speak with the Lord and be in silence. And sometimes you'd alternate that with maybe going to adoration. So as a young adult, my parents encouraged us to go to adoration at least once a week. And I also remember that being huge in the development of my own spiritual life. There were a lot of practices at home that they did to help kind of cultivate that silence and also that lack of distraction. Living intentionally, learning how to say no to things, living slow, so that we didn't just have this busy, distracted life. We were able to kind of self-reflect and build relationships with our family, and that sort of thing. But I think that that's something that I want to be really intentional about with our kids. It's just allowing them to have undistracted time so that they can think and explore themselves and explore their relationship with God. Because I think ultimately, we see this pattern as we talk with other young adults or people maybe in our spiritual groups we're a part of. We're all going to wound our kids somehow in some way. We're never going to parent perfectly, but if we can help them have a deep relationship with Christ, they will work those wounds out with God. They will have somebody else to go to besides us that can be their savior, because we can't save them. And so if anything, if they can just love God intimately and have that beautiful relationship with him, it's going to give us a fallback. Christ will help them when we wound them inevitably, with our own fallenness and our own brokenness.
So beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. Silence, relationship with God. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a reoccurring theme that, the goal, the goal is relationship with God. It's like our own relationship with God. First of all, are we nurturing this? Are we prioritizing this? And then from this place to be able to guide the children, like, hey, you too can have a relationship with God. Let me help you get there. Thank you. Yeah, Kenny.
I think a major theme for me is hard work in growing up. We worked hard as a family, and we worked together a lot. And I think and that's just a big kind of overarching theme that I see throughout growing up, and how it translates over to faith is, if you're going to do something, you work hard at it and you do your best to do it well, to represent and to kind of give honor to where you came from, whether it's your parents or your family, or in the case of the faith, the name of being Catholic is something that I'm proud of, and so I want to kind of do my best to do justice to that and bring honor to it. So I think hard work, working together as a family are some big themes for me.
And you all built your house together, right? The house up
Mhm.
in Post Falls in Coeur
Yeah,
d'Alene?
we built two, and then remodeled one.
The current one was the remodeled,
So we
the
say two and
barn,
a half. Yeah, we built two and a half. Yeah.
the awesome barn.
Yeah.
Um, Big Dodges, we're answering the question, what did your parents do with you as you were growing up that you thought was really helpful and effective in the transmission of the faith? I'll come back to you, but just wanted to catch you up. But also, you very conveniently dropped off the call when Lindsay was getting ready to praise you and thank you and just highlight your humility for something that you had said. So good job on your timing there.
Thank you. We were not meant to hear that, but thank you.
That's right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll let you answer this question. This is easy for me.
If you want some time, are you ready to answer it, or I didn't mean to just spur that on you. I can come back to you if you want.
Um, I I can answer. I'm a creative Catholic, um, and grew up in the traditional Latin Mass from the time I was 4. Um, had some good example and some really bad example of that. And then I would say, but one of the good themes was seeing what on an occasion when I was a young teenager, just getting up in the middle of the night or what. My dad was praying before the Statue of Our Lady at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and that resonated with me a great deal. Even helped me forgive him for some other things, other bad examples. But knowing that, he was probably going through some hard times, but also getting up early and praying before work and all, he ran a construction business. So he was very busy and employed, like 70 employees, and it was not easy. And I'm the oldest of 8, but they were very focused on the family, um, and and I guess Catholic, and going to mass on Sunday. We did pray the rosary on occasion, and during Lent usually, but so that, and then just as I grew up, making my faith my own, realizing that I wasn't doing well without it. When I would experiment or imagine life without my faith when I was about probably 14, 15, 16, and then realizing I had to grow in my faith, and I did love my faith, and I was going to do it a little different from my parents, but
Yeah, thank you. And Ken, I know you didn't grow up Catholic. Feel free to say anything about that if you'd like, but you could also just talk about, what Kenny shared was the hard work ethic. So something that he learned from you guys early on was hard work ethic. And I mean, we can talk a lot about hard work ethic, not just as a good thing in itself, but also as a great avenue of the development and the building of virtue. And that, they certainly received that from you. And so maybe was that a big part of, don't feel like you have to answer this question, but just give you another option. Was hard work ethic and building of virtue, natural virtue, an intentional part of your upbringing?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. That's exactly the word I was going to use. And my parents were divorced, and I was very young, and I had to choose who I wanted to live with at the age of 8 between my mom and my dad. It was very difficult and very wounded by that. And I can put myself in several situations that I remember as a little kid. The one thing, and it was fairly contentious between my mom and my dad. The one thing I will say that I probably learned from my dad in that whole thing is he was a rock, and he did have virtue, and he was hardworking, and he was honest, but he was always there. We knew that he loved us, And not that my mom didn't, but my dad just had this stability that I think rounded us all. He wasn't particularly faithful in action, but looking back now, when I go visit him and he's in his 80s and he has a green scapular and we pray for him daily and hope that he will at some point open his heart to that, because I know he's receptive to it. So there's still time for him, because he is a good man, and he led a good life, and he was a good father to us all. And I think not on the faith side, but as a father side, he was very engaged in the kids and would do anything for us. So I did not have an upbringing in the faith, and being a convert, it was very easy for me because of just the truth of Catholicism. Once you get into it and research it, it just makes total sense. And so to become Catholic was very easy for me in my 20s. So yeah, my past before that wasn't stellar, but I think it gave me good examples, and then examples of what I may not want to do as a father or as a parent, or to mimic some of the things that happen, because I am wounded from those things. So just like I can't remember who talked about the wounds that you have, that you wound your kids or you're wounded by your parents. We still do that, but to acknowledge that and try to communicate that, and like Jacob said about apologizing for failings that you've had, and owning them, and with humility and knowing that God is there to forgive us is a big thing. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Flanagan's, would you go next?
The thing that stood out to me, and this is just one incident, but when I was 9, and my parents were part of a charismatic prayer group initially before we moved. And so when I was 9, I went to a friend's sleepover and unfortunately watched this horrible horror movie that affected me so much I couldn't even sleep with I'm the youngest, so I couldn't even sleep in a room with my siblings. Like I had to be in mom and dad's room sleeping on the floor. So this went on for some time, and I had to actually go with my parents once to their prayer meeting because I wasn't going to be left home alone, And it was just I felt so trapped and scared. And so I went to this prayer meeting, and where I was supposed to stay to do my homework was downstairs, which was like not going to happen. So I go to my mom and I'm like, I can't be downstairs. You got to help me. So can we pray with you? So I remember sitting on this Naga hide covered, totally 70s stool, and they prayed over me. And just her receptivity to have that be a response to my fear, it transformed. Like somebody prayed the precious blood of Jesus over me, and I could see like this protection. And I could go downstairs 3 minutes later and totally at peace, totally knew I was protected by the precious blood of Jesus. And we weren't religious or anything. We would go to mass on Sunday, but that was so powerful for me. So I think even the little opportunities that we have, like you're saying, Mrs. Dodge, are you Teresa? Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I had your name right. Like you're saying, you saw your dad praying in front of the Blessed Mother early morning, and it makes up for so much. It can. And I just experienced that myself, that one incident of them responding that way. And it's helped me. I feel really convicted lately, actually, to even with just the little bumps and bruises to say, and especially our little guys come up to me like, hurt it, like not even running blood, but I need a cultivate. Oh, Jesus, help heal so-and-so. And just these little prayers and making Jesus real, because he is in our day to day. And so I did experience that sometimes with growing up.
Beautiful.
I think my parents loved the Lord in different ways. My father, or our family business was a truck stop that was 24/7. So his love language was providing. He worked hard, and it often meant that we didn't see a lot of him. Somebody didn't make a shift, he worked the extra shift and then made his own the next day. Um, so there was sort of the absence of a father that, in one sense, was challenging, but I knew why he did it. He didn't go there because he just loved the job. He loved us and wanted to provide for us. And he was just, family was the core, but it was also our family of faith. When it came time to support our church, he's first in line to serve at the parish bazaar. I mean, he could have worked all week, but he's there slapping up the booth come Saturday because the bazaar is happening on Sunday. And it's just what he did. So that virtue of hard work that teaches you the meaning of sacrifice for others. My mom, God love her, she was a nun for 7 years. She never took final vows, but when she was asked to leave the convent, which I'm grateful I wouldn't be here if she did, um, but her faith was something that was very intimate to her. And it wasn't so much, she tried to share it with us. I mean, even to the point of, I remember being a little kid where she's ringing the doorbell at, 7 in the morning, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Like, what's going on? And she's running down the hallway, special delivery, special delivery. Wakes us all up, hands us a slip of paper. And it's like, what is it? Special delivery from Jesus. He wants you to see you today. And we're all confused, like, what are you doing? And my dad is laughing. She's trying to get you to go to mass this morning. It was for daily mass, like on a Saturday morning. I'm like, oh, all right, mom. But she was a daily communicant. She went to mass every day. That was her thing. She'd pray the rosary multiple times a day. It wasn't so much that she was asking us to do it. She just did it. And, she would have those moments with the doorbells or occasional ice on the foot to wake you up. It's like, well, you're awake now. You want to go with mass with me? But there was something about, you was very clear her face was important, and tying the two together was just the ultimate importance of our faith. I remember a friend of mine who wasn't Catholic. They were going on this really cool camping trip. They had all the toys, the three-wheelers, the motorcycles, all this stuff to go out camping. And like, oh, you want to come with us? Like, oh, that'd be fantastic. We didn't have all those toys. So it's like, I get a weekend to drive all these things. This is great. And I go and ask my mom and dad, I said, well, how would you get to mass on Sunday? I said, well, they're not Catholic. I don't know. I mean, we're driving to a town that I've never been to. I don't know if there's a church there, Dad. They're like, well, you can't go. And I remember being crushed. Like, no, you do not miss mass. Nothing is more important. So whatever the circumstances that they were living, the faith was just non-negotiable, period. No matter what the cool opportunities are, if you can't go to mass, you can't go, period. And I really didn't like that then, but it laid a foundation of permanence that doesn't matter how I feel about it. The church is real. The church is important, and it is non-negotiable.
So good. Oh, thank you. Yeah, gosh, there's a lot that I want to reflect back. And I mean, just in regards to, the Sunday Mass, we are asked, and right now we're asked about Sunday dispensations. Can I have a dispensation for this and that, especially in the summer months, to go camping and this and that. And thankfully, I'm in a position as the lowly associate who can't make those decisions. I can just punt it to the pastor. I say, no, you got to go talk to the pastor. But I do also, first engage them a little bit. Like, yeah, so tell me about that and what's going on and why is this a priority? And by the time, after a few minutes of talking to me, they're like, okay, I'm definitely going to the pastor now, not coming to this guy about this anymore. But the question, the way that has been explained to me one image that has been given to me, which, seems to be consistent with what you're saying there, just from a different angle, maybe even tying what you, Heidi and John, both of you said, tying those together is like, is it's like, okay, so, Jesus is my friend, and the number one way by which I'm going to get to know Jesus, I'm going to nurture my relationship with him, I'm going to get closer to him, is by going to Sunday Mass. Like, that's the first step, first building block. If that's not in place in my life, um yeah, then I can do other things, but again, that soil is different use of that analogy, but that soil is not going to be there. But so if Jesus is my friend and I'm seeking him, I'm seeking him, and this is the orientation of my life, then there may be times when I literally can't go to Mass, like I'm deadly ill, or I'm sick, or I'm contagious, or I'm taking care of somebody, and or I'm on this excursion in Alaska, and the car breaks down. We had planned to go to Mass, but or the whatever the case may be. Every once in a while that may happen, but it's like the vector, and it's like the orientation of my life is going deeper into the heart of Christ. Alternatively, if the orientation of my life is something other than that, anything else, even good things like family or happiness or success or friendships, anything other than my friendship with Jesus, if the priority is anything other than that, then things are going to start adding up, right? That list of things that I consider to be good reasons to miss Mass are going to grow very quickly. And it's like, well, this camping trip is one such reason, or friends visiting, and this is when we start getting questions, right? More and more. It's like, well, what about this? What about that? And to me, it's like, it's more of a symptom, right? It's like, let's go under the surface and ask, like, is Jesus really at the center of your life? Is this the orientation of your life? And if it is, like, those questions are going to disappear. A lot of those questions, there aren't even going to be questions anymore. You won't even have to come be bugged by the parochial vicar. You can just avoid me altogether by just coming to Mass. But yeah, just the marrying of those two things, right? It's like, it is a Sunday, it is an obligation, and it's indispensable, but it's not because it's a law that I can't break, and if I break it, I'll get punished, but rather because Jesus is my best friend, and he is the center of my life, and he's real. He's there when I scrape my finger and I need a Band-Aid. He's there to heal me. He's there when I need to watch a horror movie, or when I go to a friend's house and things aren't going well, and he's there to protect me from that. And he's there at Sunday Mass, and I can't wait to be with him. And he's there at daily Mass. Catherine talked about this earlier, where I can go and be more in a silent, more in a quiet, contemplative space, and encounter him there. Like, this is why I'm doing all of this. I'm gonna ask Jake and Lindsay too, but first, before I forget, Mr. Dodge, I just yeah, I just wanted you to know that I heard what you said about that decision that you had to make when you were 8 years old. Like, that's not easy. That's heavy. That's heavy stuff. And I'm sorry I'm sorry about all of that. Gosh, divorce, and on top of that, having being put in that position. And gosh, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of pain, a lot of healing, a lot of grace through all of that. Yeah, but thanks for sharing that.
It makes you who you are, though. All those battle wounds, and if you can stay focused, and I know it was for a reason. So I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but I know that there's a reason for all of that too. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and can I say one thing about the Mass thing too, which is very interesting?
Please.
Um, going to Mass saying it's a non-negotiable, it was so much a part of our life that I think that it's just what we did. It was so natural. We just never missed it. Daily mass as much as we could, but particularly on the Sunday, it was just expected. And it was so ingrained from the time you're an infant being held. It's all you knew. And I think our kids, I think it was easy for them. And I know maybe not when they got to be in the teenage, there's other things and other rules to go other places. But I think by that time, it was so ingrained in them that it probably would have felt very strange for them to not go on Sundays. It was very important and just kind of a matter of fact. It was just a way of life for us. Sure.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and I know this is true for you too, Jake and Lindsay. Growing up, well, I guess you can speak to that, but recently you shared with me not too long ago that actually I asked you when I texted you, hey, I'm preparing for a homily. When's the last time you missed Sunday Mass or something like that? And you said, oh, sorry for the delay. We're out camping. We just drove into town to go to Sunday Mass and we're going back out.
Awesome.
But what's one thing that your parents did with you as you were growing up that you thought was really helpful and effective in the transmission of the faith?
I think Sunday Mass was really important, and which kind of seems to be a theme, but we didn't miss Mass. Like we would go camping or we would go on trips, and that was something we did. Like we went to DC, and like my dad's trying to figure out, where we're gonna go to Mass. And I remember some of those trips, some of those vacations. Or we went to Disneyland, I think. I think that was another time. But camping, we went camping quite a bit. That was kind of our vacation was usually camping. And we would always either come in Saturday night or come in Sunday morning or, leave early enough Sunday to make Mass Sunday evening. But and we had friends that we would go camping with that, would say like traveler's dispensation, I mean, I remember thinking as a kid, like, that'd be nice. But I'm very thankful that that wasn't an option for my parents. We always went to Mass. And there was actually one time I didn't go to Mass when I was spending some time with a friend. I'm trying to remember all the details, but I was spending some time with a friend. I stayed the night. My parents thought I went to Mass, and then they found out that I didn't go to Mass. And my mom woke me up on, I think it was Monday morning, and she was talking to me about how it's a mortal sin to miss Mass. And they encouraged me to go to confession, or we scheduled to go to confession so that I could confess not going to Mass. So that was really powerful too. And then doing things together, that was another thing that I missed some of those baseball optional, like spring break practices that were, quote optional, but if you didn't go, you were benched or didn't play as much.
Yeah.
And that was powerful too. Just, I didn't like it at the time. I remember envying some of my friends who didn't have good family lives, that they like would hang out together during spring break and go to these baseball practices, and I had to go do something with my family. But that I think was really good for me.
So your family prioritized family time over those breaks, over sports or other social activities. What about you, Lindsay?
I basically the same thing, I guess. My parents, like, we spent a lot of time as a family. That was a really high priority. I guess the family being the priority, like, I knew that I was important to my parents, and it wasn't like they weren't, gosh, I don't know why this is not coming out so well, but it's like a new idea, even though I've been thinking about it this whole time. like they weren't like off like trying to spend time with like friends all the time or like do all their different things. Like what they chose to do was to spend time with my sister and I, or my sister and me. Um, I had really good Catholic friends growing up, and I'm guessing my parents had more to do with that than I, realized at the time. I think that was really instrumental in my faith, because I was very interested in going to church on Sunday because I got to see my friends, or going to youth group or like the youth conferences because like my closest friends were all going to be there too. And then I would also just add to that, my parents, afforded me the opportunity to go to Franciscan University, and that was like huge in my faith life, and I'm super grateful for that too.
So not quite an arranged marriage, but arranged friendships.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe. I should ask my mom.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had really good Catholic friends, and that was, really good for my faith. So
Maybe that's why our parents acted like they knew each other.
So maybe it was an arranged marriage.
Maybe.
Hmm.
Just kidding.
We call it highly assisted.
Worked out with the little dodges that way. A little
Teenage Catholic friends.
Yeah. Yeah, if you guys all want to move to Idaho Falls, this would be much easier. Well, I'm thinking of where to go next here, and we have about 20 minutes left. I think what I'll do is I'm getting these questions here on the screen. What are you doing with your kids now that you think is helpful and effective? What have you learned from experts that you think is helpful? And what is your home is your home warm and affectionate? I'm kind of mostly interested in this last one right now, I think, um, kind of for establishing a foundation. What made it warm and affectionate, and what makes it so now, your current home now. Um, but feel free to, if you want to choose one of these two questions instead. And well, if that's not complicated enough, I'll make it more complicated. Feel free to answer this instead. What is like, what are some categories that you think, so if thinking about, laying a backbone for future episodes, I think it'll be helpful to say, okay, now we're going to do an episode on family routines, and then just a full episode just on that. So that is just an example. I have other examples here just from as initial brainstorming that I put on here. But what others, um, what others do you think? What others come to mind for you? So many options. Either one of these first questions here, or what is a category that you want to make sure we explore?
I'm just gonna have some thoughts on what are we doing with our kids now? Um, well, JoJo lives at home still. She's 21, she's our baby. But I would say, in essence, they're all adults, and now we try to support them and um, encourage and be there for them, help them with the kiddos. I never knew how fun it was going to be a grandma. Nana, my role as Nana is like, I don't know, it's like ice cream every time or something. It's wonderful. Um, and then one of our favorite experts was Dr. Ray Guarendi. And another book that I read back in the day was A Mother's Rule of Life. That was very helpful to me, especially as a homeschooling mom and trying to find time to pray and time for all the things. And then also wanted to mention, I think think for the most part, we had a warm and affectionate home. Tried to, and I think that's very important, especially looking back now. Um, I wish it would have been even more so, because especially watching grandchildren grow up, and just being around young little ones a lot still, helping with the homeschooling co-op and watching the young families raise their own, taking them to mass. I think that is one of the key elements for little ones enjoying going to mass, because they can't participate in the same way that adults can, and it's hard for their little bodies to hold still and all of that. But I think it, in some ways, for them to feel connected and loved during mass, and to watch the Holy Mass, um, you know, having hugs from mommy and daddy, and just being accepted, and setting standards for them, that they can learn to be still and learn to be quiet, because it is a sacred place where we are praying and worshiping God. I think that's very important. But I think that warm and affectionate brings that relationship with God, and the parents, to life, and I think that will be a great foundation overall, as they move
Yeah.
forward and start growing. So
Yeah, we could probably do an episode on Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. No, you're very passionate about that. So that I think that'd be a great episode. Another category that came to mind as you were sharing, especially in the beginning, is yeah, the role of grandparents, and why is it different than the role of parents? Like, and feel free to give a short answer now if you want, but I'm trying to formulate the question. Are you just another, um, are you a second set of parents? Um,
that way at all.
what, yeah. And like what that, yeah, I guess I'm trying to ask a loaded question. You'd probably agree that it's, it would be detrimental to your, to your son and to your daughter-in-law and to their children if you acted as second
Oh, heaven.
parents.
Wow. I try to
Yeah.
we try to support them, back them up on occasion.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
always, if they want a cookie, Nana, I need a snack, ask mom or dad.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had your good food yet, and then you can have the treats later. So
Nice.
kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Beautiful.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'll speak briefly. There's obviously a common theme with all these mothers here. And a huge thing that you brought up is that affectionate, safe, warm home where the heart is, and that's what's building up and armoring these kids.
Mm.
Teresa was able to do that, staying home with the kids and schooling the kids and making our house the home and the heart of the home. And I think that strengthened our kids. It strengthened me. It was my safe place when I would come home, and it even helped armor me up. So, and I can see that as a theme in everyone here, and how important that is, that those kids can go back and they can reboot and re-interject themselves into their lives, whether it's with friends or problems or whatever. So that is a huge thing that I think we need to concentrate on. I mean, it's a natural thing for all of you here, but it's so important. I think that is,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's all.
Yeah, no, definitely another category is homeschooling. And that's not on my list there, so that's definitely something to be added. And you within that, and I'll just flag the questions here, someone can have a question. Well, what if I'm not able to homeschool, either because we need two incomes or because I don't have the mother doesn't have the skill set, or the virtue, the patience, and because I'm sure you'd all say it's no easy task. So we could navigate through all of those dynamics.
Father, if I may, I'd
Please,
add,
yeah. And you're
and
next. Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and Big Ken, I couldn't echo it more. The heart of the family, the nurturing is such a gift by our brides. I see there's a corollary also that I'm trying to live up to. I read a book recently, sort of about fatherhood, that's just really resonated. In that, years ago there was a study done talking about how kids lived. They went to school, and there wasn't a fence in the playground, and they would all cluster near the buildings. They were afraid to go out into the playground and do all the things that were further away from the building. Then they built a fence on the perimeter of the property, and the children went out and were hanging on the fence. They explored everywhere because they had a safety. They knew that they were safe within the boundaries there. And I think there's something there of the role of the dad, is that we're the wall protecting the garden, and that our job is to be ever looking outward, in a sense, as you were just naturally by your makeup as a law enforcement. You're a protector, and I want to honor you for that. I think that's a part of a role of a dad. Is when I think of how I come home, my wife would always create this beautiful environment where it's like, go greet your father. And to this day, my teenagers run to the door when I come in and give me a hug. It's so heartwarming. And when she comes home, they do it naturally. It's like, mom's home. They're like, if I do it for dad, I do it for mom. She has created that environment. The one thing that I think that my meager offering is to be able to play an anchor, because there can be a lot of drama and emotion in 7 kids of all these different ages. And because my wife is the most frequently with them, they are also the most comfortable with her in their good and bad behaviors. And so when I'm around, I feel like one of the greatest gifts I can bring my bride is, didn't your mother ask you to do that? And why is your butt still here? You go do that. It's to reinforce whatever, mom said it, I will make sure that it's going to happen. So we do decide things together, but I have a role of helping to set the boundaries of family life. And, it's nobody disrespects your mother. I don't allow it of anybody, especially my own children. And it's being able to provide that so they know there are boundaries, and it's a happier home when they know that there is a fence around it of even how they act to each other, what's allowed here. And it's not trying to be draconian and stamp it out. It's just, do you like being treated that way? And why would you ever treat your mother that way? If you have the siblings bickering back and forth, it's teaching them to say, I'm sorry to each other. That's a requirement. No. I don't care what happened. You go say you're sorry and ask them for forgiveness, and just look them in the eye. So when you're dealing with the little kid that they're all avoiding, I'm not buying it. Look them in the eye now, eyes. So that's all I even say now. It's just eyes. And it's like, look up, and that you're going to be respectful. They deserve that, to know your love and your mercy the way that God's giving it to you. And so that's the part where my wife does an incredible job of creating the beating heart, the vulnerability, and the dad helps provide some of the backbone to say this love isn't to be just walked over. It's a gift. You treasure it. You protect it. That's my job, and I want you to know that you're a provider, you're a protector as my child, and I expect you to do the same. So it's being able to provide that environment that I think does provide a corollary to that soft, vulnerable heart that is so necessary. I mean, when my kids, Heidi goes on retreat, they survive with me, they thrive with her. But it takes both to be able to have the family life that we have. So it's just, I couldn't agree more, Ken. I just want to give kudos to what, just in this short time, I know you provided in your family. And I think it's that the dual roles there of the husband and the wife, the nurturing heart and the guardian on the wall, that gives that nurturing home the warmth and affection it has, if that makes sense. He didn't like being affirmed. He left
They
it in.
don't like you receiving affirmation and compliments. Yeah.
Can he tell him I think he's
Very
awesome?
Yeah.
I'll let him know.
Yeah, very,
It's too
very
good.
fitting, very apropos.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, super beautiful. Thank you, John. Yeah. There was one other thing I was gonna say. Oh, just the retreat. Maybe we'll just flag this as a category. So you go on a retreat once a year, Heidi? Or how often? What's that like?
Oh, great question. Yeah, John and I are both part of a Catholic charismatic community, and they provide a men's retreat and a women's retreat once a year. And then we also go on a Ignatian silent retreat. We try to go once a year to that.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's another whole other category there. Which is, yeah, I mean, I guess the bigger category is the parents, first of all, the parents' own relationship with God and what does it look like to develop that, to nurture that on an ongoing basis. What are the daily habits, weekly habits, monthly habits, yearly habits to foster that?
And to see that for the children to see that we delight in each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a weekly date, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's a date in our own bedroom while the kids are just downstairs doing whatever. It's like, nope, this is a date night. Mom and dad are just going to spend time together.
That's great.
That they see that we enjoy each other.
Yeah.
So it's being able to know again that comforting of that they're in a home that's filled with love, and it's meant to start from mom and dad.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Dyson. What is one or two category? What are one or two categories that you'd want to make sure we cover that you think is important for living Catholicism at home and passing it on?
Something that stands out and something that we've worked on a lot in our relationship and just in our home is gender roles there and just like proper ordering of the family. I feel like at the beginning of our marriage, we didn't have that very dialed in. And I wouldn't say we're experts now, but I think that we've put a lot of work into that. And there's been a lot of fruit, a lot of good fruit. So that would be, I would like to see us talk about that or explore that a little bit. And then number 4 stands out to me too. Is your home warm and affectionate? That's something I think like we've been intentional about at times. Like I think that it's warm, but we've also had conversations about like just being careful how we talk. Like if we're kind of taxed, and I mean, it's pretty busy in our home. There's 7 young children, and
How old is
so
your oldest?
11, and our youngest is 15 months. And so it's quite busy, and there's a lot of needs. And so, both of us, either I come home and Lindsay's taxed, like we've talked about, just choosing our words well, like it's not I need a break, it's I need some time for myself. There's like a distinction. It's not that you need a break from the children or I need a break from the children. That's like they're, inflicting something. Like that's not right. It's like we need some time to ourselves to either pray or just think, you know. So we've tried to be intentional about those things, or like just being intentional on like how we speak and what our children hear.
Yeah, a couple topics that come to mind, or maybe one broad topic with different subcategories is like family culture. Something that Kenny said earlier, you said something like, we work hard. And it was like, that must be like the family motto or something, but I think, whether it's that you work hard or or any other thing, it's like that family identity and like that you belong to something important. So like that is like one like family culture, but then also like the Catholic culture in our home. And for me, that's like Franciscan was transformational in my faith, because all of a sudden the faith was just like everywhere you went. Like there was daily mass multiple times on campus, there was a chapel down the hall, like all our classes were still from like a Catholic, with a Catholic lens. Yeah, I don't feel like I would be where I am and who I am today without Franciscan. But then, like, as we've talked about it since leaving Franciscan, like, I don't think that you need Franciscan. Like, it served that role in our lives, but like, we can create that, I think. That's my theory. That's our theory. That we can create that same Catholic culture, like in our homes, in our lives, in our communities. Yeah, that seems to me like an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I forgot to point this out. Jake and Lindsay went to Franciscan. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2010, and Lindsay was a year later, 2011.
And Heidi, you did as well, right? When did you graduate?
98.
I
Yeah.
visited Franciscan one time, and it was actually to pick up John, Jake's younger brother, who's one of our seminarians.
Oh, yes.
And he was a freshman, I think. And I was studying at Mundelein in Chicago, and I went and picked him up and brought him to Columbus for Thanksgiving, to my mother's for Thanksgiving. And so that was the only little exposure to it, like a few hours when the campus was basically closed down. Lots of people in the seminary from there, and then people here in Idaho from a few key families here in Idaho that have sent all their kids there. So good stuff from there. And one other thing, Jake, to point out what you said about the warm and affectionate home. Yeah, the delighting, right? And we've talked about this a lot, like the importance of parents delighting in their children, and children knowing that their parents delight in them, because God, and this is not something that can be manufactured, I don't think. It's something that can only be received. So to receive God's delight, God's delighting in us, God delights in us, in each of us, individually, personally. And knowing that God delights in us, we can then delight in others. And especially parents can delight in their children. Yeah, just how important that is for the child's own well-being and security and grounding and so forth.
Oh no, we have talked about that a lot, and I think that it's key. Like if they know, and I think there's a lot of things that play into it, but like I think family time and spending time together, like them knowing that like Lindsay and I want to spend time with them and want to be together as a family, and that we enjoy that.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Okay, little Dodges. Anything in particular you want to touch on there, or what are some categories that we haven't already talked about that you want to make sure we cover?
I want to jump off what Jake just said about your kids knowing that you like them and like being around them. I guess this kind of morphs into that number 4 question there, but yeah, I genuinely do like my kids. I think they're the coolest people I know. And so I like being around them, and I want to convey that to them, that I enjoy that. And so, Father, we've talked a couple times about that keyword delight. And how that looks to a 3-year-old, and trying to convey that. And Mikey, our oldest, he is kind of a softie, and so he'll come up to us at the end of the day and just say, "Dad, you're the best dad in the whole world." Or to Catherine, "You're the best mom in the whole world.
And I like you and I love you.
And I like you and I love you." And he's just started doing that. But Xavier, our 3-year-old, he's a pretty angsty kid, and he's very rebellious and stubborn, and he's difficult. And so with that word delight in mind, I know we both kind of taken to doing this, but when we put him down for bed and tuck him in, I'll like hold his face and say, "Save, you make me so happy, and I love you very much, and you're a good boy." And just dumping all of the positive emotion into him to forget about whatever happened in the day, because it was probably a difficult day. This is how we end it. And so he can sit there with some some comfort, and hopefully that's my effort in trying to convey that delight to him. Yeah. And some kids need it more than others.
I mean, every child is so different. And I think growing up, that's something that stuck out so much is I felt very seen. I felt very known, especially growing up as one of 9 children. I think that's really impressive. Our parents always tried to, well, we spent a lot of family time together. So we had that group dynamic where we felt, known in a group, but also I always remember being able to find my mom, like even if she was maybe doing whatever you might consider to be alone time stuff, putting on her makeup or getting ready or whatever it was, probably going to the bathroom sometimes and just come and hang out with her. She was always so gracious and just creating that space to where I could just come one-on-one. And I know all the kids had that where we had access to our mom and I felt just seen and known and appreciated for who I was. And so, with our own children, like they feel that love in different ways. And for Xavier, he's the highs and the lows, and it's like he could be really difficult. And then he's just the sweetest, and he just wants to cuddle in your arms and pretend he's a baby cat. And part of how I give him love is just like, oh, you're just my baby, you're such a baby, and he's all cuddly and just like shaking because he's so happy. And the next moment, he might just be, yelling at you or not wanting to do whatever you say. And Mike's more even keeled, and so you're just trying to pour on the love, even if it's for him in like more intense, smaller periods of time. Like, okay, we're gonna shove this love in here, while you're receptive to it, not running away from us or shoving it back in our face and that sort of thing. But that does go back to something I just remember as a child, just feeling very intimate with my parents and feeling appreciated. And I think that relationship with them like taught me about my relationship with God because we're all learning about our relationship with the Father through our parents. And that's something that I remember hearing a priest say to me as we were just having conversations, that the way we parent our children informs our children about their relationship with God, how we forgive them when they mess up, how we encourage them when they're struggling. And so that has been the most helpful piece of parenting advice, just to think when I'm in a difficult situation or when my patience is tested, what am I conveying to my child about God the Father in this moment? And it's not always super concrete, but it helps inform my decision making as a parent when you're going back and forth between all these different parenting philosophies and all that sort of thing, minute decisions.
I have a text message from you, Catherine, sharing a story about Mikey. Mikey, Mom, God pushes on our hearts. I can feel him pushing on my heart. Mom, where do you feel it? Mikey, in church, because there's peace in church, and I can feel him pushing on my heart there.
Isn't it crazy? We didn't teach him that.
Our 4-year-old says the most theologically accurate statements all the time at bedtime. And I'm just blown away. And I'm like, yeah, St. Thomas Aquinas figured that out when he was 40, but you're right. That's incredible. And that's exactly how it is.
You must have an amazing godfather.
What was that? Say again?
He was an amazing godfather.
Oh, yes.
He does have an amazing godfather.
Yep.
My favorite anecdote about Zave was you sent me a happy birthday video with all the kids trying to sing happy birthday, which was an awesome, chaotic mess. That
sounds like life.
Had something of a happy birthday song in there. But then as they're trying to sing it, the connection is made in Xavier's brain between birthday and cake. And so he immediately stops singing the song and says, "Ooh, we get to have cake."
Yeah. And then he probably threw a fit when the song ended
The
and he
answer was
didn't
no.
get cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's probably still mad at me for that. I do want to highlight something else you said, Catherine, that you felt very seen and known by your mom and your mother of 9. And I suspect, I mean, we don't have to quiz them, but that all of your siblings felt that way. And gosh, or quiz or poll, but yeah, but just how, yeah, to be seen and known. And that, yeah, that's first of all, yeah, I mean, the context there is parenting, right? For kids to know that they're seen and known by their parents. but then for our own spiritual lives to know that we're seen and known by God. And this is true. And even if our parents didn't communicate that to us, if because of their own brokenness or woundedness, they weren't able to, we weren't felt seen and known by them, it is true that God sees and knows us, and we can lean into that. We can grow into that reality of being seen and known by God. And that's where the healing is found, the healing of whatever was lacking in our own upbringing. And that's also where the education for parenting is found, right? Those that are parenting now that want to pass this on. It can't be conjured up. It's not like, oh, that's what they did. Okay, so now I'm going to do it myself by just trying really hard and working really hard. No, and there's another caveat here, right? It's not like let's learn these principles so that we can work really hard and spin our wheels really fast to make sure we implement them perfectly. No, it's I'm gonna lean into God. I'm gonna be seen and be known by Him. I'm gonna be healed by Him, and this is going to enable me to then live His love and His mercy and share that with others, and first of all with one's children, as well as one can. Well, this is probably a good place to stop after acknowledging that the Big Dodgers bailed once again as they were being affirmed and encouraged and congratulated for their awesomeness.
You know, you could just close your camera. You don't have to jump off the call.
We get better internet. Hillbilly.
Well, very good, you guys. Any last thoughts? Any final words?
Thank you, Father.
Don't all speak at once. Yeah, no, good. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time. I know it's not easy to get a quiet evening for 2 hours on a weekday, so appreciate the sacrifices you did to make this happen. And for our listeners out there, going forward, we'll just have one couple at a time, and maybe from time to time we can bring everybody together, or we can see how it develops. But the intention is to have one at a time, so it's not as taxing on everyone, and also so we can go deeper into given topics. And I believe Natalie has made a Google form for people to send in their questions and feedbacks. So look in the description or something, or whatever those podcast people do with those sorts of things. And
hit the like button and subscribe.
Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell. Support us on Patreon and Locals, and leave reviews on Amazon and
no review.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're excited about this journey, and we're grateful that you're joining us on this journey. Hopefully, it will be informative and educational and edifying for all of us. And let's all keep one another in prayer. All right. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night. God bless you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode, and we'll see you then.